Hamilton slams Mercedes after poor strategy. In Japan, Mercedes tried using Carlos Sainz's strategy of keeping DRS open for the driver behind him in order to defend, but unlike Singapore, this time it was unsuccessful, leading Hamilton to slam the team amidst an average Japanese Grand Prix. It seems like Mercedes' problems don't seem to end this season, and despite the new contracts Hamilton and Russell sign, could we see further disdain in the team? And will that affect the Silver Arrow's chances for the title next season? Sainz's tactical insight in granting Norris access to DRS to boost their positions towards the end of the Singapore race was once again at the forefront of everyone's mind during the closing stages at Suzuka. This time it was the Mercedes duo attempting to employ a similar strategy, with Sainz rapidly closing in and following Hamilton's contact with Perez at turn 1 and Alonso's swift pass at turn 3. Mercedes chose to adopt different strategies. This deviation from their initial plan, which aimed to challenge Ferrari on a track that didn't favour the W14's downforce-deficient setup in Suzuka's first sector, prompted both Silver Arrow's drivers to deviate off their intended strategy path. After Hamilton made a rare error at Degner 1 and subsequently made his first pit stop, he and Russell came perilously close to a collision when the pursuing Mercedes attacked at Spoon. Hamilton's defense was right on the borderline of what was deemed acceptable. Subsequently, Russell transitioned to a one-stop strategy, and as the leaders re-entered the fray, he displayed commendable defensive skills against Leclerc at turn 2, showcasing excellent overall driving. Later on, Hamilton came back into view after undercutting past Sainz during his second stop in Leclerc's wake, revitalizing his pace. After Russell allowed him to pass into turn 1 with 5 laps remaining, following a radio protest, Hamilton surged ahead, only to be instructed to return the favor by providing his teammate with a DRS advantage ahead of Sainz. But Hamilton questioned the tactic, as he felt that not being allowed to pull clear and build up a big enough gap against Sainz was completely the wrong thing to do. "I don't think that was a good idea at all," explained Hamilton. "When they suggested it to me, I knew that they had obviously thought of it from the last race and it made no sense. I needed to get as far ahead as possible and I was on my way. I was around 2 seconds ahead and they asked me then to give George DRS, so I had to come off the gas down the straight to get him 0.8 seconds behind. He got DRS but got overtaken, which was going to happen because he was on a 1 stop and we were on a 2. Then Sainz got past him, and he was right on my tail, so yeah, not ideal. It made it very hard for the last couple of laps, but I think as a team we've got to be grateful for a 5th and a 7th. It's better than a 6th and a 7th. Hamilton felt that the whole situation regarding him and Russell could have been handled better by Mercedes because they both lost time racing each other at that critical phase of the race. "We should have swapped around earlier, and I should have gotten as far ahead as possible to keep the gap as big as I could with the Ferrari," he said. "I think if we had inverted, maybe George would have had a better time holding him behind, but because he was trying to fight me and damaging his tyres, I think it just made it all complicated. The fact is, we're not fighting each other in the team's championship, as the drivers is not important where we are. What's important is that one of us finishes ahead of the Ferrari to keep the position in the constructors. So today we really needed to work as a team." If we're being honest, anyone who can look at the races with a more or less objective eye could clearly see that Hamilton is not really a team player, as he is only playing for his own interests and results. It didn't go well in this race, just like in Singapore, because Russell was simply faster. Hamilton made several big mistakes. Once he was overtaken by Russell, who left him a lot of room in a very fair manner, so he had no chance in a finish line after his less favourable acceleration. Then he nearly slammed the car into the wall, pushed Russell off the track during the attack, and must have been extremely pleased with himself that they lost 4 to 5 seconds against the Ferraris. At the end of the race, of course, he complained on the radio behind Russell that they would lose to Sainz as a team, when he was obviously thinking of himself here when he referred to the team. With the number of laps that were left, that strategy made perfect sense and would have worked because the Ferrari wouldn't have had the overspeed to pass Russell. But all in all, it's really interesting to see what Mercedes is doing, because at first they act like the chemistry is great between the drivers, but that's only when Russell plays his role as the second driver. The thing is, Russell isn't Bottas, and he's claiming his spot more and more. After the end of the race, Russell said he had no issue with the team orders, as the intention was to boost the overall result for Mercedes. "Yeah, of course," he said, when asked by Motorsport if he accepted the place swap. "You use the radio as a bit of a release valve because it's so hot in the car. It's a long race. You're there pushing for an hour and a half. You're fighting every inch. The main goal is to finish second in the Constructors' Championship. The Drivers' Championship is totally out of the window. Lewis is in a good place to fight for a good position, but the goal is just to finish ahead of Ferrari this season and keep on working for next year. So yeah, no issues on my side." What I find weird in these last few races is that Russell seems to show a sense of needing to prove himself, and his approach to driving suggests a belief that any mistake, such as failing to secure a victory or outperforming his teammate, could lead to a bad outcome for him, which is very far from the case in my opinion. While it is good to take risks in order to win the bigger prize, the gambles Russell is taking are not justified. The Singapore race serves as a good example, but there have been other instances in both this and the previous season where Russell has opted for risky maneuvers rather than simply not doing anything, which sometimes proves to be the wiser course of action. Hamilton, in contrast, typically positions himself advantageously in case an opportunity arises, a strategy that frequently pays off, and Russell would benefit from recognizing that refraining from action can also be a viable option, as constantly pushing to force the situation may not always give you what you want. The Japanese Grand Prix revealed that Lewis Hamilton and George Russell are finally living up to the anticipated excitement of their strong Formula One driver pairing, which was promised last year. While in Singapore, they fiercely contested Ferrari for victory, running in close formation. In Japan, although they were competing for lower positions, the intensity of their frustrations expressed over team radio was arguably even more pronounced, and it was Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff who made the final call, instructing Russell to let Hamilton pass in the closing stages. This decision was made after the strategists debated whether to swap the positions or honor Russell's request to keep Hamilton behind him until the last lap, allowing them to jointly defend against Carlos Sainz's Ferrari. And the tense radio communication during this situation, along with an earlier wheel-to-wheel battle, brought renewed attention to Russell and Hamilton's dynamic. Despite their measured post-race comments, the unfolding events during the race remained very interesting, and ultimately, Mercedes managed the situation effectively. The early race close calls didn't actually result in any significant time loss for either driver. At most, it was just a matter of a second or two, and this wouldn't have made a significant impact on their chances of challenging Charles Leclerc for fourth place. And in any case, Sainz would have caught up to them towards the end. While the team's primary goal is evidently to surpass Ferrari, the fierce competition between the two drivers is inevitable, as they're both hungry for success and will battle fiercely for every position, especially given the current dynamics at Mercedes. Russell finds himself frustrated, openly admitting that this season hasn't unfolded as he had hoped, and that his standing in the Drivers' Championship is now, in his own words, completely out of contention, trailing Hamilton by 75 points. Both drivers are committed to the team until the end of 2025, so Russell has long understood that he'll need to actively vie for an advantage over Hamilton, rather than merely biding his time for Hamilton's retirement and assuming the team leader mantle with ease. This is bound to lead to further strain and heated moments down the line, but for now, however, both drivers and team are managing the delicate balance between a spirited, competitive intra-team rivalry and the risk of internal disagreements, even if this might not always be apparent from their radio communications. Only time will tell how this mini-drama will unfold, but in any case, it probably won't be good for Mercedes. Let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Do you think Russell and Hamilton's situation will be similar to the Rosberg one from a while ago? Thank you for watching Racing Zone, and we will see you in the next video.